Time we see Earl.
Yeah, we haven't seen Earl in a month.
I know he's on wedding duty right now. I talked to him this morning. He's doing better.
He's married the whole East Side.
It is time to bring in our next guest.
Yeah.
He has joined us before, and before we introduce Ben Baby to the public again, we have to play a clip from the last time we had a Bengals reporter on. Steve, take the clip. Ben, make sure you're listening.
I mean, he may hate both of us, but one thing is clear.
Yeah.
Is that I would whoop Ben Baby in a race. That would not be a race. I'm closer to Mixon speed than I am Ben Baby's. So
Wow.
I could be holding a baby and beat Ben Baby in a race.
Wow.
So we can leave that alone.
Not my baby.
James Rapine are talking trash. What do you have to say about that? We can't hear
We can't hear him.
That is the most disappointing.
Oh,
Ben, we had audio.
can't
We
hear you,
heard you
Ben.
before. Hold on. I got to work with Ben here.
That's a bad
His
job.
rebuttal was
He was pissed. You can tell by his face.
Oh man, he's like, when I see him at the
Line it up. Line it up. No
Y'all got me
script.
now?
Yeah, I
we
got
can
you.
hear
Yeah,
now.
Ben. Are we going to see a fight at
man,
Bengals
yeah.
practice today?
No, listen, man, the amount of slander I got to hear from this man, James Rapine, is just unprecedented. And I got loafers I could beat this man in. He knows this. He doesn't want to race me. As Mike knows, he does not want the smoke. It has been readily available to him. So the fact that he goes out
Readily
and keep saying this just behooves me. But always excited and happy to be on with y'all today.
Ben, it's great to have you with us. I think, the two biggest storylines for the Bengals are both Joe Burrow. One, his calf. Two, his contract. Give us the latest on both of those things, if you will.
So let's start with the calf injury first of all. We talked to him yesterday for the first time since he had that injury, and he said that he had a great day yesterday. That's a good thing. He was a full participant, which is also a very good thing. But I think what's interesting is that he said that he's never really had a soft tissue injury like this before. And when I asked him how he's going to be able to manage that, or if it's something he's got to manage over the course of the season, he said that still remains to be seen. He said straight up, he goes, I don't know if I have a good answer for you. So I think they're going to have to figure out what he's going to look like on that calf, what his mobility will be. I think those are all things that remain to be seen. And because of the nature of the injury, he said that's why they wanted to kind of take a nice and steady recovery process, nice rehab process, so he feels as good as possible going into week one, which he's expecting to play. As for that contract, that's a little trickier because he said that it'll come when it comes, and he hopes that it happens in the next few days. But I asked him point blank, I said, are you surprised it hasn't gotten done yet? And he kind of shrugged his shoulders a little bit, and kind of had to look for the right words to say because he ultimately said the right things. But based on his body language, it did appear that he was kind of surprised it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see if that continues, if they get this done before Sunday's game.
Ben, I just wanted to follow up on the injury part of this because I said yesterday that if the Bengals thought that resting him 2 more weeks could get him closer to this 100%, this mythical 100% where no NFL players are once the season starts, that they would do it because they wouldn't risk it. So my assumption, if he plays, is that he's as close to 100% as they think he can get. Is that fair or not?
I would actually disagree with that premise, and here's why. We wrote about this on ESPN.com, and that Burrow's never really been 100% to start each of the last couple of years. In 2021 was coming off that ACL surgery, and he said it took about halfway through the season until he started feeling like himself again. And then last year, I think he came back way too fast after that emergency appendectomy, was still trying to put weight and muscle back on. And you saw, that game he had against Pittsburgh in week 1 where he threw 4 interceptions, a lot of uncharacteristic throws that he thought he could make that he still couldn't. It took him a few weeks to really get back to that level. And so Burrow has kind of over the course of his career, oddly enough, kind of managed to not be 100%, get through those first few weeks and then hopefully find his footing. And I wonder if that's the case now. But he did say that this injury is different than last year's because he feels good physically. It's just trying to manage the soft tissue.
Ben, when I look at the game plan for the Browns, obviously upgrading with Myles Garrett, they brought in Shelby Harris, Zarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, and then you add to the fact that Jim Schwartz has a more aggressive upfront game plan. Do you think we'll see a little more Joe Mixon than we're used to seeing? And will they, hesitate to roll out Burrow a little bit more? Because that's a big part of his game. He's one of the best quarterbacks that can step up and throw the football, find different pockets and different levels. So do you think the game plan will change more than traditionally that we see at Joe Burrow?
I do agree with that. I think that there's, when we talked to Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan about how they were able to manage him coming off the knee injury, he said that they had to do some things schematically to make sure that they put Burrow in good situations. And they, when he told me that might be a possibility as they go into week one, and the mobility question, anytime it's brought up directly, nobody's been able to give a clear answer. Not Zach Taylor, not Joe Burrow. So we'll see how he looks on the move, because that's not something we've got a great glimpse at in our limited media viewings that we've had since Burrow came back. And so, I think the big question is going to be, how good is that Browns defense? Obviously, like you said, they spent a lot of resources this offseason fixing that. I know that was a weakness for Cleveland last year. I'm very excited to see what Dalvin Tomlinson looks like in the middle of that unit. And, the Bengals are going to need Joe Mixon to be better than he has been, quite frankly. So this could be a good test to see if he can live up to that.
Ben, when you look at that secondary, you got Cheeto coming back from his injury. You're replacing 2 safeties. How confident are you? And you got a second year in Cam Taylor-Britt.
Yeah.
How confident are you that they get things up to speed and they are able to click right away going up against these Browns wide receivers?
Man, y'all are asking all the good questions today, because that's one thing I think is a huge thing that nobody's really talking about, because, the Bengals secondary had a lot of time together, specifically with those safeties. And we talked to defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo yesterday, and he said it's almost like, a second baseman going to a shortstop, being able to turn a double play, being able to pass off those assignments when you're in zone. And you're getting a new combination in that with Dax Hill and Nick Scott. Are they going to be able to communicate well in the middle of plays, be able to pass things off, have that good, ability to know what the other is thinking? I think that's the big X factor for me. How is Lou going to use both of those guys, because they are not Jesse Bates and Von Bell? However, I've heard from guys in that secondary that they believe this is a really fast unit, and they have upgraded in speed at those spots. That being said, I do like their cornerbacks. I think Cam Taylor-Britt, he could be poised for a breakout year. The way he ended last season, I wouldn't be shocked, quite frankly, if he's one of the best corners in the league by the end of the year when you look at the advanced analytics and what he was allowing under expectation according to NFL Next Gen. I think Chidobe Awuzie was phenomenal before he got hurt. We'll see what he looks like coming off that ACL, and this is going to mean a lot to him. It's the same field that he got injured at last season, and he knows Amari Cooper very well, one of his good friends, one of his chess buddies, and he's going to be amped up for this one.
Ben, I want to go back to Joe Mixon, because Joe Mixon's agent, I thought he was out of line. Basically attacked you on Twitter. You do your job, you do it fairly. You're not a homer, and listen, as someone who's not, I'm actually a Bengals fan. I'm not sure if you know that or not. So sometimes fans here get mad at me because they feel like I'm biased against the Browns or whatever, because I'm not a homer. And so when you're not a homer, which you're not, sometimes people get pissed off about that, which is ridiculous to me, but it is what it is. I thought his agent was way out of line. What happened there? Has that been settled? What's the deal with that?
Man, I gotta watch what I say here, but okay. I will try to answer this as best as possible. I think that we reported everything fairly to both sides. We did not hear anything, throughout the course of the offseason. We looked at it. And, as I told Peter privately, and he can feel free to share our private conversations. I don't think that would reflect poorly on me, if we're being quite honest. And we always wanted to make sure that we gave Joe a chance to respond, make sure that he had a chance to be a part of the reporting as, things were going on throughout his legal situation, whether it be the shooting of his next door neighbor playing with Nerf guns that Mixon wasn't a suspect in, but he's now involved in a civil suit in that situation. Or in the case before the AFC divisional game against Buffalo, when police alleged that he pointed a gun at a woman and threatened to shoot her. Ultimately, Judge Gwen Bender in Hamilton County Court said that there wasn't enough evidence to find Mixon guilty. So he was not guilty in that case. And throughout the whole process, we were in communication with his attorneys, and we reported all of that well. And I, quite frankly, I'll give you all kind of a little bit of the backstory whenever Mixon decided that he was going to boycott several reporters in the locker room, not just me, but others, and was James Rapine being one of them, which quite frankly didn't make any sense to me at all. And we tried to ask Mixon, I said, is there anything that you found that was unfair, or the things that you had problems with? And he still has not addressed that, because, we're in the locker room every day. And as I told somebody yesterday, if there are issues with us and what we're reporting, come and talk to us. That's why we're there. We're there to kind of be behind what we end up saying, good or bad. We've got to be able to speak to you face to face and explain why we did what we did. And if Joe wants to have that conversation, I'm more than happy to have that, and that's been available to Mixon and to all the other reporters. But I imagine this will eventually blow over, but I feel confident, and I think we feel confident in our reporting and its fairness and accuracy.
This is getting back on the football field. Jamar Chase last year missed a couple of games, and it's weird because Jamar Chase was kind of like the darling, like he was that guy, and then Justin Jefferson, for some reason, or not some reason, he's really good. Yeah. He's like, now it's Justin Jefferson. He's the guy. He got the dance. He's doing the gritty everywhere. Do you kind of feel like Jamar Chase is kind of like, well, hold on, now, listen, I'm still Jamar Chase. Like, there's a lot of guys y'all put above me, but I'm just saying I'm still that guy.
We haven't really gotten the sense from Jamar in that case, but I wouldn't be surprised if he thinks that internally. And Jamar, I think this could be a year for him to establish that he is, like you said, that guy, one of the top receivers in the NFL. I mean, he's been to the Pro Bowl his first 2 seasons in the league. He was a Rookie of the Year. He's done so many big things. I think one of the issues about the perception of Jamar Chase is, you go back to that rookie season, he was doing a lot of big things. He came out of the gate. Remember, there was all those conversations about him and the drops he had in the preseason, which were not fake. Those did occur, by the way. But then he came out week 1 against Minnesota and just caught a bunch of deep balls. And that explosiveness is what we were used to seeing out of Jamar in 2021 in that Bengals offense. Then you go to 2022, teams made it a point to make sure that Jamar Chase had 0 explosive plays, no deep balls, didn't get behind the defense. That's the one thing they wanted to take away. This year, if Joe Mixon's able to break off those big runs, if they're able to soften defenses a little bit and maybe force them to get into the box, that could open more one-on-one opportunities on the outside for not just Jamar, but for T. Higgins as well. And I think the wrinkle here is, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw more quick game to Jamar, saw more RPO action with the receivers, and they really try to get Jamar in space, whether it be on the outside, in various parts of the formation, because he's so good, he's so explosive, he's so strong that you want to get the ball in his hands in space as much as possible.
Ben, let me talk about the Browns here. Myles Garrett in training camp and OTAs has lived in the backfield. And obviously Cincinnati has gone out and got Orlando Brown Jr. And I guess they asked him about, what he thought about Myles Garrett. He gave him a bunch of high praises. And they saying that he said that he played him 5 times and only given up 1 sack. So with that being said, what do you expect to see on Sunday between these two?
Listen, talking to Orlando Brown yesterday and kind of engaging his interest in this, he is hyped for this matchup. He said this is kind of what you want in the NFL. You want to go up against the best of the best, and Orlando Brown believes he's one of the best tackles, left tackles in the league. And Myles Garrett, that praise is real. You could tell in the way that Orlando delivered it. It wasn't, just platitudes. He fully believes that Myles Garrett is one of the best players in the league. He called him an alien. And knowing Myles from his days at Arlington Martin High School and then watching him at Texas A&M firsthand, I can confirm that he's been that guy since he was of that age, and he's always been just one of the supreme American athletes. If we're being honest, I think what he does is incredible, and that matchup is going to be key, and we'll get a glimpse of how good Orlando Brown is going to be, and to his point and to his credit, he did point out that Orlando Brown lost a rep against Myles Garrett in a pivotal point in his first game, I believe, in Kansas City, that ended up costing them the game. And he goes through, and that's something that is top of mind for him. And he wants to be able to go out there and show that he is among the elites at his position. So I'm excited for that matchup. And the Bengals, if they want to get to where they want, I know y'all talked about the offensive line in the previous segment, they're going to need Orlando Brown to be good on the left side. They're going to need Jonah Williams to be good on that right side. And I think this is going to be a very good test for them on Sunday.
Ben, we talked about the losses at safety, which is the biggest concern. But the one other position that, obviously their backup quarterbacks are trash, and if they have to play, the Bengals won't win any games. But we got to talk about their backup running back situation. Samaje Perine played a very big role for this team last year. He decided to go, win 6 games with the Broncos. All right, good for him. But the Bengals, like we've talked a lot about this with the Browns, like it's a lot of question marks behind Nick Chubb. But Nick Chubb's a good deal better than Joe Mixon. I like Joe, and he had a really good year 2 years ago, but I agree with you. He was lousy last year. I don't really trust. I know they drafted, was it Chase Brown they drafted this year? I don't trust any of the guys behind Mixon at all. What do you think of those guys and how they're going to use them?
There's a lot of slander going around here. We got some
Yes.
Jake Brown slander. We got some Chase Brown slander. We've got some Travion Williams slander. And some of that's valid. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, getting Chase Brown in, I think that's going to be key. I like you said, the backups, they are a big unknown. I think from Samaje leaving Cincinnati to go to Denver was a pretty big loss for them, something that has been a little understated because, quite frankly, in that AFC Championship game, Samaje was the running back the Bengals needed. They did not need Joe Mixon. Samaje was on the field 65% of the snaps. Joe Mixon was on the field 35% of the snaps, which you can't have happen. Your RB1 needs to be on the field in those kind of situations. And Mixon's pass protection has always been a point of concern. And so now getting somebody in on third downs and that third down back competition, that's going to be ongoing. Is it going to be Travion Williams? Is it going to be Chase Brown? Is it going to be Chris Evans? And I thought Evans had a good camp. This was a camp for him to really show he belongs on the roster. I think he did that, really worked on his game in a lot of ways. Travion Williams, who Mike and I covered at A&M, I think he was hurt in the preseason and training camp, but he has shown some flashes, and I'm curious to see what he's able to do when he gets a higher workload and if he's going to be healthy. And then we'll see what Brown brings to the table. But I would agree in your assessment that, if something does happen to Mixon, they are going to need one of those guys to really step up because they do not have proven workloads, and that could be a problem. And I think it's one of the reasons why Mixon is still on the roster, even though that, they were able to negotiate him down to a lower cap hit. It's quite clear that they don't have a better option than Mixon, and there's not really a ton out there that are significantly better for the price they were going to have to pay when you talk about the money that was still owed to him and then the money you would have to pay to a new running back. So I think that they are really going to be – there's a lot of pressure on Mixon to be better, to be more explosive, and he's got to stay healthy because otherwise, like you said, there are a lot of unproven quantities in that backfield.
Ben, let's wrap it up with this. I know Mike's got one for you after, but obviously the Browns have been the biggest nemesis for Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor's never won in Cleveland. Joe is 1-4 against the Browns. Even if you take out the first year where he's a rookie and they were bad, still 1-2. Now, he did win the last game, but it was in Cincinnati. Why is it, do you think, that the Browns, in my opinion, have played better against the Bengals over the last 3 years, or at least the last 2 years, than any other team in football? And do you expect that to change week 1?
All right. Well, I'm going to preface this. I'm just a casual observer here. I'm not a football expert by any means. But based on my evaluation, I think the Browns, and correct me if I'm wrong because y'all watch them really well. I think that Stefanski's bootleg game under Baker, I thought that was really well done. And when you had Jacoby Brissett in there, I think that it looked solid. I think that the misdirection that they did, that's one thing that the Bengals have struggled with at times under Lou Anarumo, and they've gotten better at that. But I thought early on especially, the Browns did a really good job with their nakeds, their boots, and really creating those explosive plays, especially, being able to scheme up one-on-one matchups where a guy's basically running free one-on-one on one side of the field and Baker just has, a massive amount of space to deliver the ball. I think that's been huge. And I think secondly, Myles Garrett has done a phenomenal job against them. I thought Denzel Ward has also been very strong against the Bengals as well when he had that pick six a couple of years ago. And I think that it's been a pretty rough matchup for them over the last few years. And sometimes, like we say in the fight game, styles make fights. Yep. And this has just been a tough style for Cincinnati to deal with. That being said, I am also going to continue for that trend to continue. I think Cleveland wins this one. We talked about Joe Burrow coming back, that uncertainty that we have. We talked about the secondary. Are they going to be able to pick up in time? And I do think that Deshaun Watson, now that he has more games under his belt after his suspension from the NFL, I think that should yield to a more productive offense for Cleveland. Well, it better, because I think there's a lot of pressure riding on him this year to be much better than he was. And so all of those factors considered, I'm picking Cleveland on Sunday.
That is Ben Baby, Cincinnati Bengals beat reporter, picking the Browns to win on Sunday. Ben, before we let you go, I got a poll result to read for you. And whenever we read poll results, it's brought to us by our dear friends at PCC Airfoils. If you're looking for a job with career advancement and great benefits, well, PCC Airfoils is a leading manufacturer in Northeast Ohio. All locations of PCC Airfoils in Eastlake, Menor, Wickliffe, and Minerva are hiring for all positions starting at $18 and up, plus full benefit packages, paid time off, and a signing bonus. You can apply online at precast.com/careers to learn more. The three guys out there, Ben, will tell you the YouTube chat has never been wrong. When we put a poll up to the YouTube chat, they are literally undefeated in predicting the correct answers. So I asked them at the beginning of this interview, if Ben and James Rapien got in a fight, who would win? And with hundreds of votes, 64% are going with the undefeated boxing champ, Mr. Ben Baby.
There you go. Ben gets
It's not to be wearing these loafers. I'll beat him in a fight. I'll beat him in whatever you want. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
Thank you, Ben. I will see you on Saturday. Ben. We'll get a beer, and we'll watch some good football on Sunday. Nice. That is Ben Baby, ESPN Bengals beat reporter. Ben, appreciate you, and we'll see you this weekend.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank y'all for having me. Always fun.
You got it. Good stuff. Great insight from Ben Baby there.